Okay, so let's unpack this with a question that, sits right at this intersection of deep tradition, faith, and, well, some pretty urgent environmentalism.
Hmm.
When all the materials used in religious worship, the flowers, garlands, the natural items we call puja materials,
Yeah.
when they've served their purpose, where do they actually go?
It's such a critical question because the sheer volume we're talking about is, it's staggering.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Millions of tons every year across India. And sadly, the current destinations are, well, they're deeply undesirable. They create an immense environmental problem.
So where are we talking about?
The sources confirm these sacred offerings often end up polluting the most revered places. We're talking rivers, drains, ponds, sometimes the ocean, or they're just mixed in with all the general trash.
That feels like a huge philosophical paradox, doesn't it?
It is.
I mean, these are materials handled with so much reverence, tied to deep personal faith, yet their final destination is just pollution, disrespect.
Exactly.
And our mission today is really to focus on that central conflict. Why does material tied to such deep faith deserve this fate? And how do we move it toward something respectful, something sustainable?
Precisely. We're going to explore the policy and the practice of transforming this huge stream of organic matter into something the experts call pavitra khat.
Which means?
It translates to sacred compost. And this whole deep dive, it's grounded in the work of key national policy experts who've spent, over 2 decades on this exact issue.
So they've been moving it from just a local problem to a real viable national solution.
That's right.
So we're not just talking about recycling here. We're analyzing how policy, philosophy, and practical composting methods all come together to give this sacred material a dignified continuation.
Right, a spiritual continuation even.
Here's where the challenge for me really crystallizes. You have this paradox. The flowers are revered in rituals, but then they're thrown away in ways that pollute the very things, the rivers, the earth, that are also seen as sacred. The source material we looked at asks it so pointedly. It says, does our faith-related sacred material deserve such an end?
And we have to recognize that the materials themselves often make the pollution problem even worse. It's not just, organic waste.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of garlands are bound with plastic threads. The flowers might be sprayed with chemicals to preserve them. And critically, they often have these brightly colored synthetic dyes that just leach into the water.
Ah, so that would dramatically increase the toxicity.
Exactly. And the biological oxygen demand in those rivers goes way up. It's a huge problem.
So it's not just an aesthetic issue or a volume issue. There's a hidden chemical problem here.
A huge one. And this isn't just about individual conscience anymore. There are traditional and now increasingly legal constraints against this kind of random disposal.
Okay.
The sources make it really clear that just tossing these things into water bodies is now widely seen as ecologically and ethically unacceptable.
And that recognition creates this urgent need for, systematic management, something that respects both sides of it.
The environment and the spiritual commitment, yes.
Which means any solution has to do both things.
Yeah.
It has to stop the pollution, that's the policy side, and respect the offering, that's the spiritual side.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us, I think, directly to the foundational philosophy that's driving this change. What's the core principle here?
The guiding principle is all rooted in a deep respect for the natural cycle. The core teaching is that we have to understand, know, and then teach others how to convert this material easily, systematically.
And the ethical driver.
It's summed up perfectly as, what came from the earth should return to the earth with love and respect.
That completely reframes the whole discussion.
It does.
It's no longer about getting rid of trash. It's about participating in a cycle of fertility and reverence.
And when you start to see the materials through that lens, they stop being waste. They become this valuable, nutrient-rich resource that's just ready for transformation.
Okay, that transition is perfect.
Yeah.
It brings us to the practical opportunity, converting these potentially polluting puja materials into pavitra khat, sacred compost.
Right.
This is the simple, scalable, and honestly elegant solution we're looking at today.
And what's so compelling is how accessible the technology is. This isn't some complex, high-tech industrial process.
Well,
not at all. The sources really emphasize practical methods. The opportunity exists to convert this material into compost right at home.
at home, using what?
Just basic tools and processes. We're really just talking about harnessing natural aerobic decomposition.
Okay, let's get into the technical details for a minute. If someone is listening, maybe they have some small temple in their home or in their community. What are the basic mechanisms here? How do you turn flowers into high-quality compost?
Well, at its core, the transformation is just a matter of managing the carbon to nitrogen ratio, moisture, and aeration.
Okay.
Flowers and leaves, they're rich in both carbon and nitrogen. So the simple home method often just involves layering the materials, the flowers, maybe some cotton, some shredded paper, or dry leaves for a carbon source.
And then you just let it sit.
You have to make sure it gets air, usually by turning the pile regularly. And this is critical. The material needs to be shredded or chopped up.
Why is that?
It just increases the surface area for all the microbes to work their magic quickly.
So the key isn't some fancy machine. It's just knowledge and consistency.
That's it. If you manage the layering and the moisture, you're creating the perfect environment for microbes to turn that revered offering into a nutrient-dense soil amendment.
And the value proposition here seems enormous.
It is. You're capturing essential nutrients. Nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus that would otherwise be polluting a river. Instead, you're concentrating them into fertile compost.
So you stop thinking of it as waste management.
You start framing it as value addition. You're respecting that sacred cycle by returning the material to the earth as nourishment.
That makes the solution so immediate, so actionable for anyone listening. It brings the problem from this, seemingly insurmountable national challenge right down to a kitchen garden solution.
Absolutely. And think about the success stories this is already generating.
Oh, yeah.
The sources cite examples of specific temple trusts, especially in cities like Mumbai and Pune, that have done this successfully. They've set up dedicated composting units right on site.
So they went from dumping to producing.
They went from dumping hundreds of kilograms of flowers every week to producing high-quality, non-polluting compost. And they use it for temple gardens or even sell it to support community projects. It proves the model works at scale.
That's a powerful reframing.
Yeah.
You're not disposing of the sacred. You were creating sacred nourishment.
Exactly.
But to make this scalable, to move it from a brilliant idea in one temple to a national practice, that requires more than just philosophy.
Yeah.
It needs deep policy muscle, decades of expertise.
And that's why this deep dive so quickly brings us to the work and the credentials of Mr. Pramod Dabrase.
Okay.
He provides the foundational policy expertise for this entire sustainable approach. I mean, systemic change on this level, changing deeply ingrained ritual behavior, it just doesn't happen without a dedicated architect connecting all the dots.
The philosophy, logistics, governance.
All.
And his history is, it's pretty extensive. We're talking 23 years working all over the country, drafting policy for, a dozen states.
Yeah.
But that's just a list, right?
Right.
What was the core idea, the policy innovation he championed that made this transformation actually possible on a national level? Why did it take 23 years to get a composting solution integrated?
That's a critical question.
Yeah.
And the difficulty wasn't the composting technology. Like we said, that's simple.
So what was it?
It was bureaucratic and cultural. Mr. Dabrase's key policy insight was realizing you could not treat Pooja material the same way you treat household trash.
Uh-huh.
He championed the policy framework that was necessary to define sacred waste as a separate waste stream entirely, distinct from general municipal solid waste.
I see. So if it's general waste, it's headed for the landfill. But if it's a separate stream, it mandates its own collection, its own handling, its own processing infrastructure.
Precisely. That administrative separation was the fundamental piece. He was instrumental in developing policy guidelines that moved the responsibility for respectful disposal from, the individual devotee who might just throw it in the river.
To centralized, organized collection points managed by municipalities or temple trusts.
Exactly. And that required drafting national policy guidelines and then adapting them for over a dozen diverse states dealing with local resources and different municipal structures.
So his policy work was really the essential bridge. He formalized the philosophical need for respect into a legal, functional, community-level practice.
Yes. He created the scaffolding that was necessary for a home-based composting method to evolve into a national movement.
It's amazing.
And his work involved taking experience from the ground level, seeing what worked in local temples, and translating that into replicable models with regulatory certainty at the national level. He worked with national and international agencies to make sure these practices met global standards.
And his work continues to evolve, right?
It does. He's currently heading the Center for Sustainable Environment and Development Initiative, CSED, and has recently launched a really forward-looking organization called Circle.
Circle.
Yeah, and this organization is focused on integrating this policy foundation into the realities of the 21st century.
Okay, so the problems are ancient and traditional, but the solutions have to be modern. What's the agenda for Circle?
Circle is dedicated to accelerating the Sustainable Development Agenda by addressing modern demands, logistical, informational. And what's most compelling is their integration of advanced digital interventions.
Digital interventions in compost policy. That feels like a bit of a leap. How does something like AI or online education fit into teaching people how to respectfully dispose of flowers?
It's all about scaling knowledge and optimizing efficiency. So online education is the primary tool to get those simple home methods we talked about out there.
Reaching people globally.
Right, showing them exactly how to turn their offerings into pavitra cod. That standardization of knowledge is crucial.
Okay, that's the education piece. What about the AI?
The sources indicate AI can be used for things like waste stream analysis, resource optimization.
A sample.
Well, imagine AI tools monitoring the output from different collection points, predicting the material flow, or even helping municipalities optimize their local composting processes, like determining the best shredding method or moisture control for a specific climate.
So it's bringing data precision to a process that historically probably relied on trial and error.
Absolutely. Online education scales the idea, and AI scales the efficiency and the execution.
It really reinforces that this movement is way beyond just ideas. It's being actively executed, modernized, translating policy and tech into practical services.
It is. Mr. Dabrase and his team at Circle are focused on implementation support training, consulting, practical assistance for municipalities and temple trusts. They're making sure the policy on paper truly becomes pavitra cod in the ground.
Closing that sacred cycle with modern tools.
That's
So let's just synthesize what we've deep dived into. We started with a fundamental philosophical challenge, right? The disrespect shown to sacred materials as they pollute waterways, and this need to reconcile deep faith with ecological responsibility.
And we saw how that challenge is being met by a pragmatic, scalable, and really accessible solution, creating pavitra cod, or sacred compost.
A simple process supported not just by traditional wisdom, but by the hard-won clarity of decades of policy experience, thanks to architects like Mr. Dabrase.
And crucially, that policy expertise is being future-proofed. We moved from ancient tradition to digital integration. We're seeing organizations like Circle use AI and online education to scale this, turning a traditional cultural problem into a modern, replicable solution.
The aha moment here, I think, is realizing that the path to solving this massive environmental problem, the pollution of rivers and sacred sites, was found by adopting a spiritual lens.
Yes. Respecting the sacred connection to the earth, it's just a powerful example of how aligning spiritual commitment with policy intelligence creates real, enduring ecological value.
Which raises an important question for you, the listener, to think about after this deep dive. If long-standing, tradition-bound practices like this can be revolutionized through dedicated policy, simple home-based practices, and digital tools like AI, what other everyday challenges are we overlooking? What other simple, sustainable solutions are just waiting to be scaled up if only the right policy architecture were put in place to connect, say, the community kitchen garden with national infrastructure?